Hi, Music 203 students. This is a video about spelling and identifying augmented sixth chords, and it's the first video of three about the augmented sixth chord. So the first one is about spelling and identifying the chord. The second video is about voice leading with the augmented sixth chords, and the third video covers Roman numeral analysis with augmented sixth chords. So when you're spelling augmented sixth chords, the first thing you want to do is think about scale degree 5 in whatever key you're in. And the reason for that is because augmented sixth chords are most often predominant type chords. In other words, they're chords that precede 5, that precede the dominant chord. So in that way, they take the same spot as 2 or 4, or the Neapolitan, or 5 of 5, or 5/7 of 5, or the leading tone chord of 5. And composers during this time period that are using these chords knew this chord had special powers to really delay the 5 chord, thus delaying the tonic. So that's really where these chords mostly fit in. It is true that you can have them on different scale degrees, but scale degree 5 is the most common augmented sixth chord, preceding the dominant chord. All right, so let's say we're in the key of D major. This is just a made-up example, not in the textbook. What's scale degree 5 in the key of D? Well, it's A. Okay, so once you think about scale degree 5, you want to think a half step below and a half step above. Now, the half steps should be true minor seconds, meaning they have to be spelled as different letter names. So a half step below, G sharp, half step above, B flat. Now, given those two notes, G sharp and B flat, notice they're a diminished third apart. Of course, if you present them as the inversion with the B flat on the bottom, they're going to be an augmented sixth, thus the name of the chords, right? So you want to put the B flat in the bottom and the G sharp up above. Now, all three, the Italian, the French, and the German, have that basic augmented sixth interval. Okay? So the next thing you want to do for the Italian is you want to add in scale degree 1. That's it for the Italian. So the Italian only has 3 notes. It has the augmented sixth interval that we spelled surrounding the scale degree 5, and it also has scale degree 1. Now, if you're writing the Italian chord for four voices, you want to double scale degree 1. So you double the D in this case. All right, well, to spell the French and the German, you're going to start with the same 3 notes. So they all have those 3 same pitches. So you start with the augmented sixth interval. You add in scale degree 1, that makes it Italian. But for the French, you're also going to add scale degree 2. Okay, so again, for the Italian chord, you have the augmented sixth interval and have scale degree 1. French has those same 3 notes with the addition of scale degree 2. So in the key of D major, scale degree 2 is E. Notice that from the bass, the usual bass of these chords, that's a tritone, an augmented fourth. So this French chord is a little bit more dissonant than the Italian and the German. All right, and again, for the German chord, yeah, you want to start with the same 3 notes. So that makes it Italian. And then for the German chord, you're going to add in scale degree flat 3 in major keys. In minor keys, it'll be just the regular scale degree 3. So imagine you're in D minor, you would just add in the F. But in D major, you have to add in the F natural. Okay. Now, of course, if you were going to spell this as a chord altogether, you'd want the accidentals to look a little bit more like this. And of course, if you're going to put a stem on the note, on the chord, you want to make it look like this. But we're really more interested in just making sure that we have the correct notes and the correct spelling. One more thing about this example. This is in the key of D major. Notice how we had to mark in the B flat, the G sharp, and the F natural for the German. If this was in the key of D minor, the chord is spelled the same, but it's way less chromatic. So you would not have to mark in the B flat. You would not have to mark in the F natural in D minor. You would just have to mark in the G sharp. So the augmented sixth chords are spelled the same way between parallel keys, but they are less chromatic in minor keys than they are in major keys. All right, let's take a look at another example in another key. This is E flat major. So again, when you're spelling these chords, the first thing you want to think about is scale degree 5. So in the key of E flat, scale degree 5 is B flat. Here we are in the bass clef. Next thing you want to do is surround that scale degree 5 by minor seconds, one below and one above. So below it, A natural, and above it, C flat. Now again, they have to be half steps, but they also have to be spelled like seconds. So you can't use B natural, it has to be C flat. Okay, the next thing is to think about these two notes as an augmented sixth interval. So there it is. So there's your augmented sixth, in this case in the key of E flat between C flat and A natural. Now for the Italian, remember you're going to add in scale degree 1, and then you're done. So for the Italian chord, there are only 3 notes. If you have 4 voices in your example, you would double the C, the scale degree 1. Now, the French has the same 3 notes as the Italian, with the addition of scale degree 2. So in the key of E flat, that would be F. Okay, and then the German chord, again, always spell the Italian first. So here's the Italian chord. And then for the German chord, if you're in a major key, you're going to add in scale degree flat 3. If you're in a minor key, it's just the regular third scale degree. So in E flat major, it'd be G flat. In E flat minor, it would still be G flat, but G flat's in the key signature for E flat minor. So you have to add in flat scale degree 3, which is G flat. Okay, so one other thing to notice is that in the German chord, the scale degree that you're adding in is a perfect fifth from the bass, whereas in the French chord, it's a tritone, augmented fourth. Here's another example in the key of C major. So in the key of C major, scale degree 5 is G. Surround that G by half steps. Minor second below, minor second above. Present those 2 notes so they're an augmented sixth apart. So A flat on the bottom, F sharp on top. Notice that the typical bass for the augmented sixth chord is a major third below the tonic. In C major, it'd be A flat. In C minor, it's still A flat, but you don't have to mark it in C minor. In a little bit, I'm going to show you that these chords are spelled the same in C minor, but they are less chromatic. All right, then for the Italian, you're going to add in scale degree 1. And remember, all 3 of the chords, Italian, French, and German, have these 3 notes in them. So to spell the French, start with the Italian chord, and you're going to add in scale degree 2. Scale degree 2 in the key of C is D. Again, from the bass, you have that tritone. For the German chord, I'm going to start with the same 3 pitches. And then if you're in a major key, you're going to add in flat scale degree 3. If you're in a minor key, it's just going to be the normal scale degree 3 from the key signature. So in the key of C major, you're looking at an E flat. Now notice this time I left myself a little space to write the accidental there. So from the bottom up, A flat, C, E flat, F sharp. Now you should not be thinking about augmented sixth chords as being triads or seventh chords. they're really not normal triads or seventh chords. They really come about through the lines interacting, the horizontal part of music. They can be found in different positions, but theorists don't usually put any inversion symbols on these chords. I'm showing you the typical bass. So the typical way that you're going to find them is to have this note in the Italian, French, and German be the bass, which is a major third below the tonic. So this is just the most typical way you're going to find them in music. Now, what if you're going to have these same three chords, but in C minor? Well, they're spelled the same, but the difference really comes about with the accidentals that are already in the minor key. So for the Italian chord, you already have the A flat in the key signature. You'll add in the F sharp and then the C. So just notice the difference between them in terms of here's C major, here's C minor. They're just a little less chromatic. And again, here's the French, A flat's already in the key signature, C, D, and F sharp. So again, there's only one note that's outside the key in a minor key. And then for the German, which notice has 3 different accidentals in major keys, here in a minor key, you're only going to have 1 because the A flat and the E flat are already in the key signature. So they're spelled the same between parallel keys, but they just end up being much more chromatic in major than minor. More practice spelling augmented sixth chords. This time I'm going to spell them as a 4-part voice leading spacing, and I'm also going to spell just 1 in each key. So the first one here is an F major, and I'm going to spell the French chord for you. Now, a lot of times what I like to do is think about it kind of on the side as like an up and down chord, and then later put it into the music. The voice leading I'll be showing you in the second video. So first thing, in the key of F, think about scale degree 5. So scale degree 5 is C. Then you're going to surround that C by half steps, right? 1 below it, 1 above it. And you have the notes B natural and D flat. Now, arrange those notes so that you have the D flat in the bass and the B natural up above. It doesn't mean that this is going to be the soprano line, but this will be your typical bass. You can put this note in the tenor or the alto or the soprano. Then for the French chord, you'll add in scale degree 1, which is F. Now if I stop there, of course, I'd have Italian. And then in addition to scale degree 1, you also need scale degree 2. And the key of F is G. So those are the 4 pitches that are in the French chord. And let me just give you a voicing here. Lots of different possibilities, but you do want to for sure have the D flat in the bass. This time I'm going to put the B natural in the tenor, but I could have put it in any other voice part, of course. And then I'm going to put the F here and the G here, let's say. Well, it's just one possible voicing of the French chord. I could have put this note in any other voice or this one in any other voice and so on. But the typical bass note is going to be that major third below, which in the key of major key is flat 6. In the minor key, regular scale degree 6. Okay, now I'm going to spell a German chord in the key of A major. So as usual, think about scale degree 5 first. Scale degree 5 in the key of A is E. Think a half step below, half step above. And then you're going to write those 2 notes so they're an augmented sixth apart. So when we spell the chord, we're going to have the F natural in the bass and the D sharp in an upper voice. Always add in scale degree 1. If I stop there, I'd have Italian. If I wanted French, I'd add in scale degree 2, which is B. If I want the German chord in a major key, use flat 3, flat scale degree 3, which is a perfect fifth above the bass. Of course, if you're in A minor, you would still spell it as a C natural, but it would be in the key signature. Okay, so German chord in major, spell the augmented 6, scale degree 1, scale degree flat 3. In minor keys, it's just the typical note from the key signature. In A minor, it'd be C. All right, when you space it out for 4 voices, make sure you put the F natural in the bass. And then up above it, you could put any one of the 3 notes. You could put the A, the C, or the D sharp in the tenor. It's really up to you. I'm just going to put the C in the tenor this time. Okay, and then I'm going to put the D sharp in the alto. Whoops, wrong note. And then I need the A. Okay, so one possible spacing for the German. Here's the F natural, there's the A, there's the C natural, and the D sharp. As always, just make sure you're paying attention to spacing guidelines and voice crossing. Make sure you're not doing any voice crossing or overlapping. Okay, the next one is in a minor key, and it's G minor, and it's the Italian chord. So think scale degree 5, which is D, half step below it, half step above it. Again, you're going to put the E flat in the bass. Now notice you're in a minor key, you don't have to mark in the E flat. It's already there. If you were in G major, you would have to mark it in. So for the Italian chord, you're going to have an E flat and a C sharp. You're also going to have scale degree 1, which is G. And when it comes down to what to double, remember to double the G, the scale degree 1. Typically, you don't want to double tendency tones. You're going to have a tendency in the next chord to take this one down and take the C sharp up. So staying away from those tendency tones is a good idea with the doubling. So we want 2 Gs. Here's one possible voicing. So here's the E flat and the C sharp, and there's the G doubled. Of course, there's lots of ways you could do the doubling. You could also have something like this. This works fine as well. Okay. Just as long as you have the G doubled. Okay, the last one I'm going to look at for spelling is in C sharp minor, and it's a German chord. So think scale degree 5. Scale degree 5 in C sharp is G sharp. This one's a little more tricky. What's a half step below G sharp? Well, you might be thinking it's G, but remember it has to be a different letter name. So it's F double sharp. And then a half step above is A. Now you're going to present that so that you have the A in the bass and the F double sharp up above. Okay. Then you also need scale degree 1, which makes it Italian. And for minor keys, for the German chord, scale degree 3, which is E. Now keep in mind that if you were in C sharp major, you would have to mark in an E natural. Okay, so here's one possible voicing of the chord. So you have the A and the C sharp. I need the E and the F double sharp. So this one is going to be very tight spacing, very close together, but that's what it looks like. So here's the A in the bass, the F double sharp. That's my augmented sixth interval. Here's scale degree 1, and there's scale degree 3 for the German chord. All right, now I want to show you how to identify augmented sixth chords. This is in your textbook on page 382 in the self-test part A, page 382, part A. And when you identify an augmented sixth chord, you want to begin by approaching it as you normally would a triad or a seventh chord. So given these notes, F flat, A flat, D, and C flat, I'm going to attempt to stack them in thirds. So here's the D, here's the F, here's the A flat, here's the C flat. Now be careful, make sure that you have the appropriate accidentals. So it's D natural, F flat, A flat in the key signature, and C flat. Now look at it as if it was a triad or a seventh chord. Remember that all triads and all seventh chords are spelled from major and minor thirds. So between the root and the third and the third and the fifth and the seventh, if you have a seventh chord, you're always going to see major and minor thirds between root third, third fifth, fifth seventh. That means if you do find a diminished third, you see the diminished third there? If you find a diminished third, you should immediately stop thinking about it like a triad or a seventh chord and know that you've probably found an augmented sixth chord. Remember, the diminished third, when inverted, is the augmented sixth. So when you find it, when you're stacking it up in thirds to look at it like a triad or a seventh chord, you know that it's not a seventh chord. It must be a augmented sixth chord. Now what I like to do is think about it as a vertical up and down harmony. So the F flat is the bass note. The D natural is up above somewhere in one of the upper parts. I can recognize this pitch right here as being scale degree 1. So that makes it Italian. But then I also have scale degree flat 3 in A flat major. So that's how I know that I found the German chord. Okay, so it's so important when you're doing analysis, Roman numeral analysis, or these kinds of exercises, when you stack the notes in thirds, D, F, A, C, right, they're all a third apart from one another. When you find a diminished third interval, you know you found an augmented sixth chord. Then you want to think about it as, here's my augmented 6, here's my scale degree 1, and then because this is scale degree flat 3, I know it's German. If I just had these 3 notes, it would be Italian. And if I had a B flat instead of the C flat, I know it would be French in this key. All right, here's the next one. And we have the notes C, A sharp, F sharp, E. Now, if you're going to think about this in thirds, you would start with the F sharp. So you'd have F sharp, A sharp, C, now notice it's C natural, and E. Well, this is a major third, so you might be thinking, well, maybe it is a seventh chord. But then when you look at the A sharp to the C, notice that's a diminished third interval. Now keep in mind that a diminished third is 2 half steps, but it's spelled like a third, right? So between A sharp and C, there are only 2 half steps, but it's spelled as a third apart. So again, as soon as you find that diminished third, you should be thinking augmented sixth chord. So put the C in the bass, put the A sharp somewhere up above. That's your augmented sixth interval. You can recognize that the E is scale degree 1. And then what other notes present? Well, we have the F sharp present in this one. And you can see that the F sharp is scale degree 2 in this key. So we found the French chord. Again, if there was no F sharp and there was just these 3 notes, you'd have Italian. And if you didn't have the F sharp and you had a G instead, then you know you found German. By the way, one thing about the German chord is that it actually sounds like a dominant seventh, but it functions in a different way. Okay, here's number 3. Now, in these exercises, they've put augmented sixth chords for sure, but they've also put other chords in there too, just to make sure that you're not always assuming that it's an augmented sixth chord. If you were to stack G, B flat, and E in thirds, you would have E natural, G, and B flat. Now notice that all these notes, E to G, and then G to B flat, they're a minor third apart from one another. This is a triad. It's a diminished triad. It doesn't belong to the key, however, so you have to ask yourself, where is E the leading tone? E is a leading tone to the key of F, which in this key is 5. Okay, so it's not an augmented sixth chord. It would be if this was a G flat, and you can see how the book is really trying to trick us into thinking that it might be. Because remember, the typical bass note for augmented sixth chords is a major third below the tonic. which would be G flat, not G natural. And yet you can also see how close this chord is to the Italian, which would be G flat instead of the G natural. Okay, just a couple more. Here's numbers 6 and 7. B flat, another B flat, D, G sharp. If you're going to stack them all in thirds, you would go G flat, B flat, and D. And right away, you should notice that this is a diminished third interval. So it can't be a triad. It has to be an augmented sixth chord. So think about it like this. B flat goes in the bass, G sharp somewhere up above, there's your augmented sixth interval. It also has a D, which is scale degree 1, and that's it, right? So it's Italian. Remember, the Italian only has 3 distinct notes. So I like to look at triads and seventh chords like this, but then when it comes to augmented sixth chords, I like to think about it as a vertical sort of up and down thing, because you know that this is the augmented sixth interval, and then you can figure out what's in the middle. Do I have scale degree 1 and 2, or is it 1 and 3? Is it just 1? Then you know if you found Italian, French, or German. All right, here's number 7. And we have the notes G sharp, B, C sharp, E sharp. If I was going to stack it in thirds, I would think C sharp, E sharp, G, natural, B. And you can notice there is a major third here, so it could be a seventh chord. But then between E sharp and G natural, that's a diminished third. So right away, don't think about it like a seventh chord. It's got to be an augmented sixth chord with that diminished third interval in there. So think about it like a vertical up and down chord. G natural in the bass, E sharp somewhere up above. That's your augmented sixth interval, right? These two notes. Wherever you find a diminished third, you can just invert them to the augmented sixth. Look for scale degree 1, which is the B, right? And then what's the scale degree? What scale degree is C sharp? Well, in the key of B, that's scale degree 2. So this is a French chord. Notice the augmented fourth from the bass. So the French, remember, has the augmented sixth interval, scale degree 1, and also scale degree 2, which in the key of B major is C sharp. All right, well, I'd like to encourage you to go ahead and complete this part A on page 382. Check your answers in the back of the book. That's a good practice for identifying augmented sixth chords. Remember that you're also going to find some chords that are not augmented sixth chords. Perhaps secondary dominant, secondary leading tone chords. Don't forget about mode mixture, Neapolitan, right? Those are all possibilities as well.